A 19-year-old girl named Isabella screams as molten metal spikes are slowly driven through her most intimate parts, while hooded men in religious robes cheer and call it God's work. Her crime. A neighbor said she looked at him funny. This actually happened in 1578 Spain. And what I'm about to show you will make you question everything you thought you knew about human evil. The Spanish Inquisition didn't just burn witches. They perfected torture into a sick science, creating devices so brutal that victims would literally beg to be killed just to end their suffering. And women got the worst of it. Way worse. I've spent months digging through sealed church archives that were supposed to stay hidden forever, and what I found will haunt your nightmares. These aren't horror movie props. These are real torture devices used on real women, documented by the monsters who operated them. Fair warning. What you're about to see contains details so disturbing that historians refuse to study this stuff. But you need to know the truth about what humans are capable of when they think God gave them permission to torture. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the Spanish Inquisition wasn't just about religion. It was about the systematic destruction of human dignity, one scream at a time. Let's start with a device that broke more women than any other. Something so simple looking that you'd never guess it. It could destroy a human being in under an hour. Picture this. You're dragged into a stone chamber that reeks of blood and human waste. In the center is what looks like a basic pulley system. Just rope, a hook, and a ceiling beam. Seems harmless, right? Wrong. This is La Garrucha, the pulley, and it's about to turn your own body weight into the instrument of your destruction. Maria Gonzalez found this out the hard way in 1562. Her neighbor accused her of witchcraft because she knew how to heal sick children with herbs. Within hours, she was hanging from this device by her arms, which were twisted behind her back at an impossible angle. Here's how it works. They bind your wrists behind you, thread the rope through the pulley, and hoist you up by your arms alone. Your shoulders aren't designed for this. Within minutes, you feel them starting to separate. The pain is unlike anything you can imagine. Your bones are being ripped apart from the inside. But here's the truly sick part. They don't just hang you there. They lift you up until your toes barely touch the ground, so your leg muscles cramp from trying to support your weight. Then, without warning, they drop you a few inches and jerk you to a stop. The sudden jolt sends shockwaves through your shoulders and spine as ligaments tear and joints dislocate. Maria's screams echoed through the chamber for 18 straight hours before she finally broke and confessed to crimes she never committed. The inquisitors kept detailed notes on how long each woman lasted. They discovered that mothers broke faster when they threatened their children. Virgins lasted longer but made more noise. Widows were the toughest, they had less to lose. Maria's shoulders were permanently destroyed. She never used her arms properly again. But she was lucky. Many women died hanging from La Garrucha, their hearts giving out from the sheer agony. And this was considered the merciful option. Because if you think that's bad, wait until you hear about the device they used on women accused of seducing men through witchcraft. It was specifically designed to target the female body in ways that would make your skin crawl. They called it La Araya de Hierro, the iron spider, and it looked exactly like its name. A metallic arachnid forged from black iron with 4 curved legs ending in razor-sharp hooks. But this wasn't just about pain. This was about destroying women in the most intimate, humiliating way possible. Elena Vasquez was beautiful. Too beautiful. When she rejected a priest's advances in 1578, he accused her of using witchcraft to seduce men. 3 days later, she was strapped beneath the iron spider. And what happened next will make you sick. The device was positioned over specific areas of the female body that the inquisitors believed were centers of feminine evil. The hooks were heated until they glowed red hot, then slowly pressed into her flesh. The curved design meant that any movement would tear larger wounds. Her own survival instincts became weapons against her. But here's the most twisted part. While Alina screamed in agony, the inquisitors lectured her about how female beauty was a tool of Satan. They turned her torture into a religious lesson, claiming that her screams were actually demons being driven from her body. The session lasted 6 days. 6 days of red, hot metal hooks being repositioned, reheated, and driven deeper into her flesh. They kept her alive through forced feeding, not out of mercy, but because unconscious victims couldn't confess. Alina finally broke when they threatened to bring in her 12-year-old sister for the same treatment. She confessed to seducing half the men in town through witchcraft, named other women as accomplices, and begged them to just kill her. They didn't. Because the confession was just the beginning. Archaeological digs at former Inquisition sites have found fragments of these devices, with iron worn smooth by victims' blood. Chemical analysis revealed traces of human tissue embedded in the metal. The historical accounts weren't exaggerated. If anything, they understated the horror. But the iron spider was nothing compared to what they reserved for women accused of the most serious crimes. Hidden in the deepest chambers was a device so horrific that its very existence was kept secret from all but the highest-ranking inquisitors. Are you ready for this? Because what I'm about to describe was found sealed behind a wall in 2018, and it's so disturbing that several archaeologists quit the excavation rather than continue studying it. In the basement of the Inquisition headquarters in Seville, researchers discovered La Pera de la Angustia, the Pier of Anguish. This wasn't just a torture device. It was a precision instrument of anatomical destruction, designed specifically for the most intimate violation possible. Picture a pear-shaped metal bulb, divided into 4 segments covered with hundreds of tiny spikes. A screw mechanism could expand the segments. And here's where it gets absolutely horrific. This device was designed for insertion into the human body's most private areas. Different sizes were made for different purposes. The inquisitors had turned sexual violence into a weapon of religious persecution. This device attacked both body and soul simultaneously, violating women in the most personal way imaginable while claiming it was God's will. When the device was inserted and the screw turned, the 4 segments would slowly separate inside the victim's body. The tiny spikes tore delicate tissues, while the expanding metal created pressure that could rupture organs. Yet it was calibrated to prevent immediate death. They wanted confessions, not corpses. The recently discovered technical manuals are even more disturbing than the device itself. These documents, written by inquisitors and approved by church officials, read like medical textbooks authored by demons. They include diagrams showing optimal insertion techniques and timing charts for maximum psychological impact. But here's what really makes this evil. Before using the device, victims were forced to confess their sins to a priest, who would then bless the instrument of torture as a tool of divine justice. They turned rape into a religious ceremony. The psychological damage was often worse than the physical. These women were violated in the most intimate way possible by men claiming to represent God. Many never recovered mentally, even if they survived physically. The Pier of Anguish was also used as a threat. Just showing it to suspected heretics and describing its use was enough to break many women completely. They'd confess to anything rather than face that horror. But wait, I told you these devices got progressively worse, and I wasn't lying. Because there was one final torture device, so terrible that it was only used 12 times in the Inquisition's entire 300-year reign of terror. Its discovery in 2018 sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Deep beneath Lima, sealed behind 3 feet of stone, researchers found La Cuna del Diablo, the Devil's Cradle. This 8-foot tall pyramid of black iron represents the absolute pinnacle of human cruelty. The victim would be suspended above the pyramid's razor, sharp point, and slowly lowered onto it. But this wasn't simple impalement. The device incorporated mechanical refinements that could prevent penetration of vital organs, ensuring the victim remained conscious while being slowly split in half over days or weeks. The chamber was lined with mirrors, forcing victims to watch their own destruction. Religious music played, while priests recited twisted scriptures, claiming the victim's agony was bringing them closer to God. Only 12 women experienced the devil's cradle. Each session was attended by the highest, ranking inquisitors and documented in detail. The records describe women kept alive for up to 3 weeks, their bodies slowly separating while their minds shattered from the horror. This wasn't individual madness, it was institutional evil. Engineers, metalworkers, clergy, and doctors all worked together to create the ultimate instrument of human suffering. The Spanish Inquisition's torture devices weren't just about punishment. They were about breaking the human spirit so completely that resistance became impossible. They turned faith into fear, religion into terror, and divine authority into absolute power over life and death. These women, Isabella, Maria, Elena, and thousands whose names are lost, weren't criminals. They were victims of a system that discovered how to sanctify sadism and call it holy work. Their screams echo across centuries as a warning. This is what happens when institutions convince themselves that cruelty serves a higher purpose. The capacity for such evil exists in every society, waiting for the right excuse to emerge. The torture chambers are sealed now, the devices destroyed, the records mostly burned. But we must remember what they represent: proof that the greatest monsters aren't individuals, but systems that give ordinary people permission to do extraordinary evil. What shocks you most about these torture methods? Could you imagine living in a world where this was considered God's work? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe if you're brave enough to explore more dark truths about human nature that history tried to hide. Because trust me, this is just the beginning of what humans are capable of when they think they have divine permission to torture.